Oh my goodness. Seriously, I have to just do it. It's like I can tell myself I don't have to think about things that don't matter.
I was designed to do those things. How the hell does this guy know this about me?
It's impossible to not see.
When Dan read for my sister, she was like, he's psychic. She's like, how did you know that?
Yes.
She's like, it's human design, guys. Like, it's just a testimony of how legit it is.
Seriously, Danny was like FBI or CIA. He's like, how the hell does this guy know this about me?
Having my chart read, there were just thing after thing after thing that I was just like, wow, that's me.
This man is reading me and I've never met him before.
I was in the midst of one of the biggest emotional waves I've ever been in my life, and he saved my life.
It seems like everybody has the same reaction. It's that aha moment, and they want to find out more. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Human Design Advantage podcast, our Wednesday night edition. My name is Jen, and decoding the matrix for us is Dan Guru.
Jen, how are you?
I am good, Dan. How are you?
Pretty good. I'm checking the spots in my book because we have some interesting things for tonight's dissection.
Yes. I am intrigued to dissect. Tonight we're going to be doing Adolf Hitler. So we're going to be, digging deeper into what his design is and hopefully gain a better understanding of the man, acting, if he was acting out of his not self theme, and what his design says, and maybe some key things that we can be on the lookout to help us in the future, just to recognize certain things, certain patterns. I really enjoy doing shows like this, especially on history, folks, because it's like a forensic tool. So
historical context, they give a good insight into what was going on at the time, such that this could even happen. And never mind at the time, as much of it gets mirrored back today.
Well, yes. And what I pointed out too was that he is a 5-1. So his profile, his aura right now, from me being a 5-1 and the understanding that I have learned about my design, is that it is serving as a mirror. So when I realized that, I was like, oh, what is he really reflecting back to us? Because
very challenging time, as he's reflecting back to us very much what it is to have been born perfect and suddenly turn up later as an adult all messed up.
Yes, there's a couple of key things, and we're going to dive into all of that in tonight's episode. May touch a little bit on some conspiracy theories and all that comes up. But you guys who have watched us know how we roll. We like to be rebels and push the system and bring you truth as much as possible as we know it. So before we do that,
we're rebels.
We are rebels. Mm-hmm. We are definitely rebels. And that's what I love about us, because it sets us apart from everybody else. We don't mind pushing the grain on the system. So that's exactly what we're here for. But before we dive into today's episode, it is November 16th, 2022. I did not attach the PDF just yet, but if you're listening to this podcast on one of our stations, just check the description. You'll be able to find the PDF for you to view while you're listening to it and know what we're talking about. If you haven't already, we've actually had a couple of people sign up for our newsletter this week. We've had some people make some appointments. If you haven't made your appointment yet or booked a consultation, make sure to do that. The links are down below. You can go to our website, humandesignadvantage.com, and also take advantage of joining our monthly subscription program, which is the Vortex. And that is to help anybody at any stage of what you're in going through this process, whether you are brand new or whether you are advanced. It's a safe container to help you go through the deconditioning process and a community to where we can all start to learn about this ourselves. Remember, we're never going to stop learning. So that's the whole process that we do this together.
Absolutely. And I was thinking, Jen, you had asked me to determine what was going to be the best. So far, it appears as if Tuesday evenings will be the best for me to just be available for our call in, ask whatever you want portion for those people that get behind that subscribe to our channel.
Perfect.
Take on a subscription with us.
We'll get that set up. And next week we have our we offer two. Well, just like Dan said, he's going to be Tuesday night, late night calling. So that will be included in anybody who joins the Vortex. He's just going to open up his phone. We're going to set it up in our private Telegram group. If you want to chit chat with him, if you have questions, if you need support, we're going to offer that late in the evenings. He's the night owl. I'm the early bird. So, with that, you also get 2 group coaching calls. There are going to be some online modules in there for you, some workshops. And we don't just deal with human design. It is human design and a bunch of tools to help you navigate through this experiment. So we're going to talk on some esoteric knowledge. There's health and wellness workshops, all sorts of different things. So it's
hypnotherapy, yoga.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. So it's a container to really help you become the best version of yourself. That's what our mission statement is. We're here to help liberate the individual. So we are offering you guys stuff to help you go through that process.
Well, this is a great segue into the chart of Adolf Hitler liberating the individual so that the individual doesn't fall prey to this kind of power in the future or currently. Let's unmask what is raw power gone astray. Let's pull up Adolf's chart.
Hold on 1 second.
So I'll preface this by pointing out that he was born perfect. Let's everyone remember that. Doesn't matter what you find later in life. Doesn't matter. Whoever you love, like, dislike at this point in time as an adult, they were born perfect. So Adolf Hitler, so I'll give you the due. You were born perfect. You have a design that inside of his not self was designed to be exactly what he was. He was actually really good at it. Things that stand out right away in this chart. I look at this head center. It's completely open, the head and the ajna. Normally, this is a spot of great wisdom. So Hitler was well read. This is a spot of an incredible thinker, especially collaborative thinker. But he hated collaborating. If he had to collaborate for too long, he murdered those people for stealing his thunder and upstaging him. This open head is loaded with what is unconscious definition. That means everything coming into his mind and thinking and awareness, the pressure for him to come up with the concepts and the ideas and then articulate all that stuff would have been enormous. Constantly concerned that he was uncertain and needed to force certainty. Go ahead.
Well, I had posted something today, and I got a lot of feedback from different things, and I've done some research of what history tells us happened with World War II, and I'm now going through the learning process. I take some of what we see as history as not being all true. There's missing parts of it, and you said a key thing, that he wouldn't have liked to come up with all those concepts and ideas. He would have really resisted it. And being a manifester myself, he's not going to do it. He would have gotten tired of it. But I got to thinking, I firmly believe that at somewhere along the lines, he was hijacked. I mean, you study Nazi Germany and everything that they did, mind control, the mind control programs is what really launched out of it. And who is not to say that he was a victim of that himself?
No one. Yeah, we wouldn't know, because for our entire history, there's been the same, essentially, what are the same, several dozen large giant family powers that have ruled this whole planet.
Mm-hmm.
Why wouldn't they? It's not like a family had its wealth in the 1700s and then just gave it up in the 1800s. Oops, we gave it up. Don't perpetuate the family and its incredible empire. Not a chance.
Well, 2 of our presidents helped support World War II, Nazi Germany.
It actually did help support World War II. And it was at certain points indirect. I don't know that they knew they were starting that whole thing up. And at certain points, it seemed rather direct. There was something else that was very important. So let's say he was hijacked. That hijacking would have been simple for him because as a young kid, he blamed the Jews for the death of his mother. They didn't live very well. They lived impoverished, and Jewish bankers had come to be seen by him, probably through the conditioning of his mother. His mother was the closest thing to him, and when she died, any semblance of empathy left with it, essentially, which is ironic because he's a design for empathy. He's a design of empathy, and he hated it. He hated it. If ever he felt sorry for someone, they ended up dead, except for that one Jewish girlfriend that he had, a separate woman that he always kept under wraps, that he loved her. And this, I'll guarantee you, if we had their charts and his mother's charts, this woman would have been his mother in design, by design. I guarantee you it, by the way. And so, but that was it. Anything else got gone. So he had a chip on his shoulder. So let's start adding up these keynotes. So he's a manifester, and he's not emotional. So the explosive emotional wave, which can itself be incredibly explosive, in moments of anger, isn't there. So what's he left with? He's left with the sharpness of the splenic awareness. The spleen's awareness in him would have been sharp, curt, and to the point. And he's not looking for love and direction. He's got a defined G center. So he was certain about his own direction. And he's got the channel of the alpha, 7 and 31. It's hard to read the numbers on these charts. That's the top of the G center going up to the throat center where there's a solid channel. And so going up between the throat and the yellow G center, right, that channel right there, that's 7, and above it is 31.
Yes.
Yeah, it's hard to see the numbers on this.
Sorry.
Yeah, and that's okay. And his 31 is part of his design Sun Earth. So the channel of the alpha is a design of leadership. And when you're a manifester, you would love to lead. However, look at the circuitry it's in. It's in the collective circuitry, the logical collective logical collective understanding circuitry. This is all about coming up with logical understanding. A lot of its definition is in that logical understanding circuitry of the collective. So he had to share his influence. He had to share it. So what did he do? He impacted tons of people until his influence could be shared. And look at that 31. It's fixed into the detriment. I always tell people, love your detriments. They're great. The down arrows. The second expression. There's always 2 expressions to each gate. When I say always, almost always. So into each line. So 31. Let's have a look at 31, line 1. So we can be amazed at what we see. So this is his designed Sun Earth. That means the sun drives in the energy of 41, and it gets grounded in 31 to create the part of his basically way through this life that will show up unconsciously out of a tunnel and need to be shared. Both of his Sun Earth needs to be shared. Both his Sun and his Earth are gates that are in a collective circuitry need to be shared. 31, line 1. So manifestation is the title. And this would have been in the old Chinese I Ching. It says influence cannot exist in a vacuum. So he creates a vacuum so that his influence can exist in it. He did that naturally. And in its first expression, it says the sun cannot hold back the light and thus influence on every aspect of life. The natural expression of leadership. Now, some might say, hey, he demonstrated a very natural expression of leadership. Except I would, well, yeah, but until we step back a little bit and recognize seven-centered leadership, not nine-centered leadership does not want to murder anybody and take all their stuff and capture the world.
Well, nine-centered leadership doesn't want to have anything to do with that. In my opinion, especially the more that we ascend, we don't need to be doing.
We're in a great awakening period, and it's just as good a time as any to do someone who represents the opposite of the great awakening. However, as through all evolution, we go through pain, and that pain came with a lot of death and destruction. It's true, but it did pressure, and it's part of the pressure nomenclature. It's part of the whole history of the incredible pressure that's showing up now to pressure us awake. Wake up.
The more you deep dive into the Great Awakening, you'll realize that World War II never really ended.
It never ended. We've been in one form of a state of war the whole time. If you look back, you'll realize as soon as one conflict ended, another began. It was part of the Great War Acts procedures that went all the way through up until recent times and created our NSA, to actually... Unfortunately, our government listens to every phone call. I mean, not that someone's on the phone listening, taking notes. I'm just saying they're archived. Everything we say on the phone, every text we write now, at this point, is subject to scrutiny by our government. Our founding fathers never imagined that. Man shall Fourth Amendment shall be secure in their private affairs and their things and in their privacy. I'm paraphrasing. So that, they never imagine, and we never imagined this, and nobody likes it. And we gave it up because of authoritarian things like what this man represents. So let me read this in its detriment, because notice how there's that arrow fixed to the down position. And I hesitate to use these terms, the exaltation and the detriment. That's how they're referred to. I just call them the first and second expressions. It's just that the down facing arrow feels like a detriment in our current world. In our nine-centered way, it is no such thing. So, Jen, let's remind everyone this difference between seven and nine-centered real quick. The seven-centered way ended hundreds of years ago, and we've been under this evolutionary pressure to catch up and realize we're now these nine-centered beings. If you've ever looked at your body graph, there's 9 centers. The old centered chakra system was a straight line, a very yang representation. The 9-centered being is a very yin representation. It has opened up.
Well, it brings in the emotional aspect of things.
And especially when you bring in the emotional aspects of things. Absolutely. So the old 7-centered way limited its conceptual palette at cooperation and survival. That's where it was limited. Everyone on the planet today essentially would be incredibly bored after a little while back in the old 7-centered way because the concepts were limited. In the 9-centered way, the concepts are not so limited. We can dream up anything. And the genetic imperative changed from cooperation to communion. I keep saying this not to sound religious or even mysterious. Pick this word communion apart. We're here to commune in a union with the other and or determine that they're not the right ones. And rather than dislike them, find the ones that we're here to commune with. We're constantly here seeking communion. So if it's not right in one place, you go to another. And the 9-centered being never says, I can't commune with that guy, therefore I want him dead. That's not the 9-centered way, because
we just don't deal with them.
We just don't deal with them. And it doesn't mean we wouldn't open the door for them. Doesn't mean we wouldn't lend them $5 at a gas tank if they're down and out. Need to get home to the family. You know what I'm saying? That's just a thing. What I'm getting at is that's our new way now. And it's genetically baked into us. And he was alive during a time where that was true. So ultimately, he was acting out just about everything that was who he was not. He was here to make an impact. And that he did. And he made a hell of a messed up impact. Gate 31, in its detriment, where it says absorption of the light, meaning none of the light can get out. Now that's mystical sounding. So in practical terms, it's that in darkness, this darkness that can only promise manifestation. It just wants to manifest at any expense. And it's the unnatural expression of leadership. It's fixed in his chart to display the unnatural expression of leadership. Unnatural, not nine-centered. That's not natural. For our nine-centered form, the natural expression of leadership would have been far more cooperative and communal rather than destructive and murderous.
Well, him being a manifester too, he's going to want peace.
He wants peace. And so notice he never had it.
No.
Ever.
He's going to want peace.
And
when he does it, and I'll say this, because there's been, the more that I recognize my design, or even when anger comes up, and like, you know, the past 2 weeks, it's been one thing after another. I said to myself the other day, I was like, all I want is just peace. That's all I wanted, you know? And it's that recognizing you're going to get to a point where that's all you really want. And that's why I feel on some level that he was hijacked, you know. All these wars, when you dive into it, it's not really that person that's doing the war. That's the poster boy. He ended up being a poster boy for a bigger agenda that was going on underneath it. And, you know, ultimately he played a part, however he got involved or whatever. Which brings me to another thing, that on some level they have got to know what the designs were, or astrology, or pulled it up. Oh, this is the perfect person. And if we hit him like this, then, you know, he's going to get angry or react like.
He may have even looked into plenty of that stuff and then murdered the person if they gave him news he didn't want to hear, and then exalted them if they gave him news he did.
Yeah.
Expedient in that way. So, moving along a little bit. So that 31 is just, he became the design of unnatural leadership, Jen. We could technically stop here and recognize that instead of becoming the communal leader that sought to find the security of cooperation in communion with the other, could share leadership because it's a collective channel. The alpha is elected. So he did everything he needed to do to get elected, and then he took authoritarian control. It was total authoritarian awfulness, and exactly not what his definition showed, and thus he never had peace. By the way, if you're a manifester, you know, you're not Adolf Hitler. It's just that peace becomes the thing you look for when you're a manifester. It becomes the thing that you know when you see it, because you can tell when it's not there. He could tell it wasn't there, and he had no answers, no coping skills, and only yes men around him that were very nervous in his presence, because this man was a firecracker, full-on firecracker. Think about it. Splenic manifester with his awareness unconsciously lit up. See those unconscious gates going into his fear of failure, his fear and hatred of any authority above him, that's gate 18, and his willingness to challenge. This all came out of nowhere. This came out of a tunnel. It was unconscious in him. So how would he make sense of all of that? Back up to his open head, being pressured with too many things that don't matter. And gate 61 wants to be the knower. I must know. And he must know. And when I look at gate 61, you're going to love this, Jen. You're not going to love this. But 61, this line 4 that he's got in there, it's called research. He's supposed to research. It's the pressure to know the fundamental principles. Okay, that's one way. But in its other expression, which he would have been waffling about, where the tendency to want to expand that information into the integration with the others simply leads to the chaos of too many people having too many different opinions because he shared it. So what did he do? He learned to not do any of that. Don't cooperate. In order to keep the impact going, in order to keep the machine going that he could never let up, ever. Go ahead.
And him being, having that and having the knowing, he's got that one in his profile.
Absolutely. That one would have been investigating, and I'm going to get to that 41 line 1 because it's extra nasty when we look at these things. but this other line in his 61. So his head system was also then this giant amount of impatience and the forsaking of relationships. And he would forsake relationships at the drop of a hat, except for that woman he loved, one or two amazing generals for him, and that's it.
I brought up her chart if you want to look at it.
You actually have her chart?
Yeah, I pulled it. I Googled it.
Wow, maybe at the end, or
Okay.
unless you want to right now. So again, every time everything went wrong in his awareness and the manifestation of needing to make an impact, because that's what his deal is. And that manifestors want to move fast, right? They always want to move fast. And now that spleen is moment to moment speedy, it's fast. So he would erupt with adrenalized energy from that root center, the brown root center at the bottom. He would erupt with that adrenalized energy through this channel of judgment. It became his judgment that I want an all-white Aryan race, and I'm going to kill everyone that doesn't fit that description. That became a judgment he made. It fit his taste at the time. But did he really make that?
That's what I'm saying. I don't think that he honestly, what my gut is saying is that that is what they're saying on the surface. And let's be honest, what we're seeing happen right in front of our eyes, they are saying something completely different, that even if we're alive 50 years ago, we can say, no, that's not how it really happened. So I think that that's like on the surface level, because there's so much that was happening below that level of what they don't want us to know. So it's interesting. I mean, I do feel on some level that, yeah, he was passing judgment, and but yeah, something's just telling me that
another shadow of part of his incarnation cross was what should have been leadership turned into unreasonable leadership. What did I call it before? I forgot what I said. It was the lack of leadership, unnatural leadership.
Unnatural leadership.
Right. And so I was on with Tressa, and she went to the Gene Keys, and they came up with a couple more keynotes. And leadership was the up value of it, and the shadow of all of this was called arrogance. So unnatural leadership, sprinkled with all of his arrogance, absolute arrogance that he could and should rule the whole world. Can you imagine? Jen, does anyone you know want to rule the whole world with an iron fist? I don't know anyone that wants to do that. I don't want to do that.
No.
No.
Oh,
So,
no.
Hey,
No.
if someone said you can rule the whole world with an iron fist, is that something you would even want?
No, I wouldn't want to rule with an iron fist, to be honest. I don't think I've ever had that ever come up. If I ever got into the position or offered that I would definitely make some changes. Would I put a bunch of them on a ship and send them to another planet? Yes, I would, but not with an iron fist, because to me, that just doesn't solve anything.
Jennifer, I would want to read for all of them first and see if any of them had a breakthrough. See if we couldn't make them touch inside and start to watch, rain come out of their eyes so that they could see that. That's what I would want to do. Anyways, so it's called the channel of judgment, but it really is just, we did 58 and 18 as a channel last week or the week before last week, because we did these 3 gates on the root center when we were finishing up the pressure to pressure the awareness of what needs to be challenged turned into angry manifester. I don't like Jews. I challenge and murder you, and that's my judgment. Shared. This is collective. It's a logical process. It's logical if we murder everyone that doesn't look like us. Let's have us and no one else. Okay. So, I mean, listen, a population could find that to be, practical and logical. Potentially, but only under a 7-centered, old paradigm context. He was heavily conditioned as a 7-centered being in a 9-centered vehicle. Don't forget. So that means he was born in the 1800s. So, I mean,
1889.
so the shifts that were taking place just 100 years earlier, 100 and change years earlier, there wasn't a lot of time. The seven-centered way was alive and well, not being shook off yet, except here in this country, where individuals, wherever there was individual uniqueness in this country, is where that old seven-centered way was starting to get shaken off. Luckily, serendipitously, accidentally. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't like it was easy. And it wasn't like it was only here. It was wherever people were allowed to be their individual selves. Hence, and the subtitle of the whole show is Liberating the Individual, Awakening and Liberating the Individual. He was neither. He was neither an individual nor awakened nor liberated. He was in a prison of his own making by his own anger that impacted everything in the wrong way. It had nothing to do with his nine-centered frame. And suddenly his judgment turned into his right. Don't forget, this is in a collective stream of awareness, this 5818 from the bottom of the root to the bottom of the spleen, that channel, a life force in him that never turns off. It's adrenalized with the joy for correction. That joy turned perverse. His joy to correct the non-Aryanness around him got freaking perverse. Think of it. It's insane what it turned into. That's not who he really was. And that's why he never had peace in his life. Hey, Hitler, you feeling peaceful? Yeah, maybe like right when he opens his eyes in the morning, if there's no bombs going off, for a few minutes in between the limbo between not awake and awake, maybe. That's it. Ever. He had no peace. The man did not have peace. So this channel of judgment went so far awry. Right above that is the fighter, gate 38. So he's a fighter. He had to fight for his purpose. So everything had to be a fight and a struggle.
Yes.
Look it over on the other side is gate 39, the provocateur. And these are unconscious in him. Or were these unconscious? These are conscious.
His personality.
Yep. So the provocateur, the person that has to provoke and challenge, provoke, fight, challenge, and that's all he ever did. I mean, not all, but it's primarily what he did. It was just that. And then look, he's got a gate 2 in his body graph. Gate 2 likes to be fast. Just hurry up and get us to the result, because gate 2 is aware that gate 2 hooks us into our direction, hooks humanity into the direction of where the nodes are in the first place. That's what gate 2's job is. It's the yinest of all gates. All 6 lines are yin lines. It's open, it's receptive to the direction, and it's aware that the direction of life is death. It would like to hurry up now. Hey, can we move along now? It's part of the tantric process. So you can sort of hear the joke. Hey, can we hurry up now? In that way. But regardless, this thing would have asked him to want to be in a hurry. Be in a hurry to move this direction that is what you think of as your love moving in a direction. But he knew it was not his love.
Yeah. I don't.
And down deep, he had to have known. My guess is he lived a life semi-scared shitless, because after he finally got what he thought he wanted, all that open mind, I want to solve the mystery. I want my ideas to be the most important thing. I want to feel certain, so I'm going to force my ideas down your throat so I can feel like I know, because gate 61 wants to be the knower, and it's unconscious in him, in his head and Ajna center.
Right.
He can't be certain of anything, and he's thinking about things that don't matter. He was thinking about everything. It just so happened, 6 million Jews and another million or two of everyone else had to be burned and gas chambered and concentration camped in the process. Not very good. And then gate 62 is part of this whole system. So Adolf Hitler was always under the perception that in the moment, I have all the details. So when his anger would rage up, whatever he spoke as his details would be his release valve to make him temporarily feel good about his not self. Gee, that's a nice not self you got there, Adolf. Why don't you pat yourself on the back? You had all the details for how your not self was going to go ahead and basically ruin everything around you. That's him. Scary stuff. So
It is. I still feel like he was hijacked.
yeah,
Because I firmly believe that he did not commit suicide and he went to South America.
yeah,
So the person that you're describing right now, do you honestly think that he would have been able to stay quiet if he was that angry and wanted to kill? He wanted a pure white race in a country that is not pure white, without him like this being
no, Jen,
rediscovered.
that's the point. He could have never been quiet. Would be my
Yes.
opinion. That's why I don't think he made it out. I'm quite sure. I believe that they found his body. They showed it, what looked like it, apparently, and I think he died in that bunker. I don't think he made it past World War II. There was too much blood on everyone's mind to.
Yes, I do
them
agree
down.
with that. But again, like when you really start digging into history, and even now, I mean, they're talking about it. I mean, my aunt will watch World War documentaries. I've seen so many,
Mhm.
and more information is coming out because they've released a lot of, documentation that they couldn't release back then. It's, it all these mind control programs happen, all sorts of different technology, all of this. Like it wasn't just about making an Aryan race. That's surface level. There's
Not for him.
everything.
Not for him. It wasn't. Not for him. It wasn't.
Um, he may have been the poster child, but I still feel like on
Yeah, and
some level he was.
I don't think that a person. So if he was quote hijacked, they hijacked what was already happening and already there. In other words, an opportunity was seized upon. It's not like they created him. Nobody knew who Adolf Hitler was when he was a little boy. His mom was not an important figure. She was not born
Well,
into.
they do. They create. That's what they do. They do create them.
It's all supposition. He was he was born into poverty. He lived in poverty. That was his perception. And I don't know how extreme it was. I obviously ate every day. They had their means by which to
Yeah,
go.
I don't know much about how he grew up.
Well, he grew up without much, and he blamed the Jews for it. And this was his whole growing up years. And he was ostracized a little bit in high school. He was not, people didn't necessarily like him per se. And so he felt like he was just angry. He was just angry. And look at all of his channels that make this manifestor. I would like to point something out. He was angry and bitter, Jen.
Oh yeah, I agree with that.
Well, but check this out. You have manifesting channels in your body graph as a manifestor that are direct manifestor channels.
Mm-hmm.
They go straight from a motor to the throat. There's no motor to the throat connection here in this body graph. G center goes to the throat. Spleen goes to the throat. Root goes to the spleen. All of these channels are, quote, projected channels. They're not generator channels that would be generated and just responsive with all their power. They're not manifesting channels that can just go do. And so you put this projectedness inside of a manifestor aura, and that manifestor aura is designed to repel resistance and push obstacles out of the way. And people were helpless. But to fall over in this man's wake as he started to gain steam, he is that 5-1 profile, so he was designed to attract society. His incarnation cross is the cross of wishes, which just wishes it could be the rest of the law. That's what the cross, that's one of the aspects of what you can keynote the cross of wishes. It wishes it could make everything its way. Now, in a 9-centered being, if it could make everything its way, that would lead to the spirit of humanity driving its love in the direction of communion and getting along. That's what it would have been, but not in his conditioning and his world taken away from his nature. That's what those wishes did. Those wishes said, I wish I could be in control of it all. And this is coming off of the cross of the laws as a right angle cross just before. So just before it was a 5-1, it was a 2-4 and a 3-5 and a 4-6. That was all the cross of the laws. A generated business, the generated business of creating the law of mankind, essentially, which is preserve the babies, put in order the things that don't work, and basically come up with the principles that are needed. And I forgot what else is in the cross of the laws. They'll come to me. Articulate the ideas that need to get put into action. Articulate them. So
Well, I can say that he definitely did, because again, everything that was happening below the surface never stopped.
what he articulated was the unnatural expression of leadership through the details that he could command in the moments that his knowings didn't work and frustrated his and made bitter his manifestor body because he knew he wasn't certain. And in his uncertainty could only think to blame the others through his influence of natural but unnatural leadership. He exemplified this power to impact the planet with unnatural leadership. And let me read that 41 line one. See, that's in his design sun. So we already figured
Yes, right here.
his design earth was his grounding in a defined center was that of unnatural leadership. Not just as a thing. That was it. You can count on that. Now, but the 41, notice the 41's down at the bottom of the root center, off to the right. It's in red. It's pointing at the soul.
Yeah, right here.
And this is the gate of fantasy. This is the gate of desire. Hunger comes out of here. It's in the collective experiential stream of the abstract stream of humanity's collective definition. And it's in the emotional stream of awareness that is experiential. It wants to experience everything. Let me experience what it is to murder people. Let me experience the death in their eyes. Let me experience my power over you. Let me experience this impact I think I want. Let me experience my debaucherous, unnatural leadership. Please let me experience to the fullest the fantasy that comes out of me as I challenge the authority with all my power and the fight and the provocation in me. And while I'm at it, let's be afraid of failure and all that. But fantasy, hunger for experience that ultimately was always unnatural because of where that 31 is. And 41, the gate of contraction, it's called the gate of decrease, and it's the limitation of resources which maximizes the development of the potential development at hand. Meaning it's always holding back its adrenal energy so that the fantasy can grow so big that when it finally pops, it bursts its energy, its adrenalized energy into that emotional solar plex center to help start the movement of that experience. What's it like to do it in a canoe? What's it like to paint my house pink in a place where everyone's house is painted or some other color? What's it like to drive a cop car, instead of a regular car? What's it like to whatever? What's it like to go fast? And for him, what's it like to watch another man or woman burn? He did that over and over.
But did he actually witness that?
Footage, Jen. Black and white footage. I watched my own self over and over again. I'm Jewish. My mom made me watch this stuff.
I know. I mean, but
black and white footage of him at the ceremonies where he would get people to cheer to prove his site. They didn't dare not cheer. Anybody who didn't cheer, it'd be like going to a courtroom when the judge says all rise, nobody rises. That's not going to happen, essentially. And there's no real consequence in a courtroom for that. But in his court, there was a consequence. It was death. It was death. He presided over that with his own two eyes. And gate 41 is called, it's supposed to be reasonableness, the appropriate delegation of responsibility. The responsibility to put the right energy out into the world so that the experiences can be 9-centered experiences, not old way 7-centered tyrannical hierarchical experiences. 9-centered individual respecting experiential emotional experiences. I want to climb Mount Everest. Okay, gate 41. Go climb Mount Everest. You know what I mean? Do something logical. Have a parachute, extra pickaxe, and tell a few people you went in case you need to, get checked up on.
Something happens.
Yes. So in its first expression, this thing is it's the imagination. It's all about imagination and fantasy. This gate just has this incredible hunger, and it fantasizes all day long. There's nothing this gate won't think of in terms of fantasy, nor should there be anything. It's about what you act out in the impulsive manifested moment, because this man worked on impulse only. There was no solar plex to temper the timing. None. There was no ego to temper the timing. Egos will temper timing because the ego will say it's time to rest, it's time to this, it's time to support. No ego. So what do we got? This imagination to make the very best out of little. Well, he did that. He had nothing, and he became everything. And then it's coolness, where the energy to release feelings and to release it all is selective. So there were times when he was absolutely selective about what he released, his hunger that came out, this powerful force of his design, sun driving into his genome, this hunger that he could rely on this being a way he would be. Hey, sometimes I'm reasonable about how I release my feelings, and I'm selective about all of that. By the way, that's the very fifth line in his profile. That would totally resonate in a way to his profile, because the fifth lines are always, they need to be practical. They don't want to attract too much attention, dude. They don't want to be the heretic burned at the stake. So they, so they're selective, right? You know this, Jen. You selective.
Absolutely.
Yep. And so, but in its second expression, the one that's supposed to be there as a teacher, not necessarily a way, but a teacher, that second expression, the tendency and understanding. Notice it's already talking outside of its circuitry. There's no understanding in the circuitry. It's wildly experiential. It doesn't understand anything yet. It has to experience it first.
Mm-hmm.
That's why this ends up being a detriment for him. The tendency in understanding to assume that he has the capability already. He just assumed he was the right man for the job, that he would take the job as a manifester, impulsive manifester in the moment with no peace in his life. He angrily took every job. Every speech he gave was filled with rage. All of them. Just rage. And it's called the hothead, the urge to release feelings no matter what. And again, it's experiential, so he had to be shared. Who's he going to release these feelings to? He's going to share them. He was compelled to share the release of his unholy, influential, unnaturally leading feelings. Now the keynotes are adding up. It's a lot. And that open ego just wanted to prove he could do it.
Yeah, that open ego.
Prove he could do it. Prove he could do it. And the open emotional solar plex center would have been desperately sensitive to the emotional wave. Ergo, the second there was a second of conflict, we know what it's like to witness the unemotional, be afraid of conflict and afraid of the, the conflict between two, to be not want to get entangled in things that are hard. Let me just, say it's going to be okay, just because they don't want, right? They don't want the conflict. They don't want to avoid the confrontation, and they end up avoiding their own truth when they do that.
Yes.
So as soon as there was a confrontation to him, his snap, immediate judgment in the moment was to fight. And as that channel of the brainwave 5720 does, right now, cut your head off and kill him. Again, this man's remedy for everything that was ever went wrong, even a little bit, was to murder the other person.
So let me ask you this question. If you did not know that this was Adolf Hitler's chart, would you still read it the same way?
No, not at all. Not at all. So Johnny somebody shows up with this chart, because by the way, this chart will repeat itself over and over again, right? The year's going to turn over and over again. Planets will return to the same place. This is not the only man with this chart.
Right.
Or substantially this chart. Guys, just always remember, there's only 36 channels in this body graph. They're going to repeat. There's only
I realize that. I don't know, just something inside. Not that I'm defending him or anything like that. There's something inside of me that says that what we know from history is not all truth, and I'm going to go with that because I see what they're doing now.
Jen, because he probably was hijacked. It's just that you and I will probably differ on the spiritual nature of his hijacking to some degree, because I say his hijacking was, so they hijacked him, but they hijacked the not self that he already was to become more of a not self being.
Yes, I can agree with that. Agree with that. Dan, I've witnessed it in my face of somebody that has been, hijacked in one way, shape, or form. And you ask them later, why they did that. And they honestly say, I don't know. It didn't click. Like,
right.
It's like someone else.
Yeah, that's a nine-centered comment. I don't know. It didn't. That's a person recognizing, my individualness matters most. I see I hurt you, or whatever it was. I acted out of something that I can't quite tell. I don't think I'm that, and so they don't know. And that's right, they don't know because it's who they're not.
No, it's more than that.
As it relates to this example, or as it relates to someone like
From my personal experience, I blacked out for 3 days, and everybody told me I was acting out of a certain different way that was not of me. And I cannot tell you what happened.
Did they tell
I've
you?
experienced hijacking.
So
Yes.
did bad stuff happen, or were you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, I have done a totally separate show on that for anybody that's interesting, and I'm not going to get into it on this one.
Mm-hmm.
And you can do a lot of research on the programs that came out of Nazi Germany, just like that's what they were doing with the Jews.
Oh, dude, yeah, these programs weren't his idea.
I honestly don't feel like it was just. It wasn't. It wasn't. Oh, it's your race. I'm going to kill off your race because I don't like them. That is. I believe that it all had to do with the experimentation on what they could do with humans. Because shortly after that, I mean, during that time, they were running all these programs. Even now, I'll say this, Greta Thunberg, pushing the climate control, all those posters. Do you know that Nazi Germany had the same freaking girl? Same girl, pigtails, blonde hair, running their own agenda. The agendas that we are just going through, we're running the same as World War II. This man is not here anymore. So that's what I'm saying. If that program was running,
it's a common refrain, is what you're pointing out. It's a
repeat of history. And when you recognize the history, you start to see that it wasn't just him. There's a deeper agenda to it. I mean, I'm not dismissing that what happened to the whole situation was horrific. I don't agree with it at all. But I mean, who knows? He could have possibly well done that. I don't believe that because there's so much that was going on behind the scenes. And looking at his design, they knew exactly what buttons to push to get him to move a certain way, to react, to have that anger, or, to take control.
Society certainly pushed a bunch of buttons, and people in control of that society undoubtedly pushed some buttons. There's no question.
Yes.
But the flesh and blood man that was the human being called Adolf Hitler had this design, and it went terribly wrong on him in these ways that we're pointing out. And what we're end up pointing out is just the various things that ran awry with him. So in Gate 41, the hothead, the urge to release the feelings no matter what. And that's, again, so when you take the hothead of 41 and unnatural influence of 31, that's his design, Sun Earth, unconsciously pouring out of his mouth all the time, because look, one of those gates touches the throat. Unconsciously pouring out of him all the time was unnatural leadership through a hothead. The hothead with unnatural leadership. That describes Adolf Hitler's rise to power. It describes his reign of power, and it describes his ultimate demise. The other keynote to that was arrogance. It was his fantasy. It was the craziness of his messed up shadow side fantasy that he could somehow have peace at the other end of World War.
Yeah. I mean, that's delusional in my opinion.
Delusional is what it is.
Because even in this period of time, I do know on some level that these war heroes, generals, all that, they study past wars. There has never been peace after a war. It's never happened. Never in history. So that right there, having that
peace as it relates to whatever treaties and so forth, but ultimately not right after. No, it takes a long time. And then maybe if they're lucky, peace can come to the land. But there's never really been peace, Jen.
There's never peace.
Ever since.
Never peace.
Ever.
Now, I could
Yeah.
totally understand if, I will definitely have to dig in more with history on this, because I am only knowledgeable with what they have told us in history books, which I now take everything with a grain of salt.
Yeah. I hear you.
It's just like what's happening now. Can you imagine the history books that we're reading? They're going to sit there and say the same thing about Trump being like they reference Trump like Hitler, but we see different. That's what I'm saying.
I don't know why that's the case, but every time they invoke it, as it relates to like the mainstream media or something like that, they don't know what they're saying. If they had this intimate knowledge of this man's design, they would see, oh my God, that's not it at all. So let's move on to a couple other gates. So open head, open ajna, both with one hanging gate, broken off from gate 62, which is all about the details. So every time we come back to a point, I'm going to be able to re-keynote, thought about things that didn't matter, couldn't be certain, and had incredible mental anxiety about his lack of certainty over all the things that didn't matter and the too many things that came through. So he was incredibly mentally frustrated at all times that his ideas he couldn't be certain of them. And then he portrayed the details of uncertainty in the form of power that appeared to be certain to his unnatural leadership. All of this is constantly pouring through this open head ajna for this.
I want to know how he slept in the middle of all of that.
Well, dude, he slept wicked hard is what he slept.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why he started making really poor decisions at the end of it all, because he wasn't getting the right rest.
Not for his design.
Look at his Sun Earth on a personality side. I mean, this really tells so much of a story. Get these two things put together. So, gate 3 in the Sun. Gate 3, line 5. There was always difficulty at the beginning. And it's victimization, where actions designed to overcome confusion alienate others. That's how he started, until his party started to grow. Now, in its exaltation, it's the courage to stand by one's convictions through this ordering process of suddenly putting things into order. But notice that gate 3 is in an open center. It's in his sacral.
Yes.
So if it's open, it's intermittent. Adolf Hitler could only intermittently put things into order, and that drove him into a madness of not knowing when enough was enough, open sacral center, to put things into order. You start keynoting that with what we've just read about unnatural leadership and hunger for unnatural fantasy, hunger for it now, the sharing of unnatural leadership and hunger for fantasy. And you start putting that into not knowing when enough is enough, and an intermittent process of trying to put things in order. They never came naturally, and he just only so rarely had the courage to stand by his convictions, so it seemed. It's called the unique energy of individuality to withstand confusion. So that happened to him at some points along the way. He withstood the confusion, but it was all couched in an open center. So it wasn't the 9-centered confusion way. It was the old way, tempered by unnatural leadership.
Yeah, they wouldn't have known.
That's right. Now, in its detriment, when I look at this, line 5 of 3, victimization. So the earth, the detriment, where victimization leads to appeasement, where it leads to suffering. It's a confused energy which is dominated by the ordering power of others. That was his growing up years. It was the ordering power of the Jews and the others and the elites and the Rothschilds and the bankers and anybody, and ultimately anybody who was different from us.
That's who was funding everything.
Right, of course, of course. Along with forces here, including the Bushes and the Rockefellers. There's money going straight to Nazi Germany's war machine. Through an intermediary, washing through an intermediary. That's now known stuff. To what degree, I don't know, whatever. And this is a full-on grandfather of all that. But so this is confused energy, which is dominated by the ordering powers of others, or the confused energy, which will seek to be domineering. His confused energy sought to simply dominate. That's all. And he's got another gate in that open sacral center just to the left of it, gate 42, which only wants to finish. It's hungry to finish the process. Again, that's part of the collective abstract. So this gate 42 is sort of resonating a little bit along with that gate 41, and gate 42 says, nope, complete this process, the gate of completion. Let's finish it. Let's see it all the way through. As soon as he latched onto the process, he wanted to see it all the way through his control and domination of the lack of order that needed to get put into order. He put it into a 7-centered order. He put square pegs in round holes. Hard. Very, very led astray man. I mean, as I keep reading through this, I can again, I start to feel the empathy, and I feel the sadness for this poor lost soul who was such a mess. He makes such a mess of things. And again, if this were someone, Johnny Manifester today comes, or Susie Manifester today comes to me for a reading or whatever, and I start opening up their chart, the first thing I'm going to do is point out, oh, this is great. You know what I mean? It could be the exact same chart, like, this is great. You know, you love to be influential. Now we have to work with it as your 9-centered manifestor way and start teaching them their binary. I could read all the beauty that's supposed to be here into this chart. It's just that we are reading it juxtaposed in conjunction with the man who happened to have it. And so that's gate 3. It's always frustratedly difficult at the beginning. Frustration, difficulty at the beginning. Can't put order to things. I'm a victim, victimization. That's the line. So he lived out this victimization way. Now look at gate 3 in an open center. So that sun driving into an open center could not get let out until someone else was around or there was a transiting gate. So he relied on others to condition him. He hated that. The splenic manifestor that says single definition, splenic manifestor that simply says, no, it's me. I'm the authority. I'm the boss. Look at me.
His wife had that whole channel.
Oh, so she compromised it. Oh, yeah. Yes. And she also had the whole channel right above it that compromised him. What else did she have? Oh, look at, she had gate 12, which connected to his gate 22.
Yes.
Yep. And she had gate 16, 12, 30. Oh, she has gate 1, which connected to his gate 8. Yep. So they had a lot of electromagnetics together, and he basically empowered her. She empowered him, as she generated in him the ability to basically go do all this stuff.
Yeah, I saw that when I pulled her up. I was like,
Yeah, head on back to and she was a sphinx designed to create direction. So basically, thanks, Mrs. Hitler. You know. All right, you're supposed to.
I don't think I think their relationship started after all of that, if I'm not mistaken.
No, he died after all of that. His marriage was.
No, I mean after he went on his after he started the World War II, and however it was in the middle of the war, I think, is when they met. I believe she was an actress.
Okay, that he married her. All right, I'm not sure of that timing. So
they weren't dating. I don't think they were dating before it all got started. She wasn't giving him that direction. From what I don't know, I'm very intrigued with this. I'm going to have to go back and do further investigating on this.
So check out gate 50. Now, gate 50 is in a divine center. It's supposed to be the cauldron, this gate of values. The value of historical continuity, whose traditions and values are here to serve and enrich the present and the future of 9-centered humanity. Communal 9-centered humanity. He was here to enrich our future. He was here to make a great impact and be practically a clarion that could have his wish come true of a 9-centered world, but that wasn't his wish. His wish got hijacked. The cross of wishes is a great hijacking cross. If you want to cross. if the wicked and powerful seek to hijack people, find all the cross of wishes folks and hijack them. You'll get a lot of not self behavior that they would be interested in. But it's called consistency, and it's supposed to be disciplined and natural conservatism to avoid change, to avoid the change of the tribal process of the continuity of creating the laws. It's here to help be the lawmaker. He thought he was the lawmaker.
Mm-hmm.
He thought he was the law, and he acted out the lawmaker. Conservatism and awareness of basic principles should not be abandoned casually. That's what was supposed to be there in young Adolf, and that's not what ended up showing up. What ended up showing up is perversion, a perverse reaction to rebel against the current methodology.
Yeah, he did that.
He did that, yep. When effectively stimulated the drive to rebel against the principles of others.
I think I have that gate.
So he just, but I'm reading the line.
Yes.
Gate 5, line 5, gate 50, line 5. So here we have the rebellion of the man who would not allow things to get put into order unless they were his authoritarian order, that needed to complete the thing he hungered for with his unnatural leadership and this penetrating awareness of how to always make it happen. And it was always through execution, death, and intimidation. He ruled as a seven-centered old way man with hierarchy, demands, authoritarianism, all the worst aspects that we never want to see, absolute controlled state media, controlled minds, and fear. This man governed by fear. And that was the only way he could resolve the uncertainty he had about what he didn't know. This man looked over his shoulder at all times. He had no peace because he was always thinking about too many things. Why wouldn't he be? He was always looking over his shoulder. And by the way, that's true. That is, yeah.
I noticed something and I'm laughing.
What?
I forgot to change the bottom of the Adolf Hitler says United States representative. And I started laughing because that's not far off.
Yeah, don't pay. Well, yeah, in certain ways.
It's not.
That's funny. So just to sort of wrap all this up, he's in his nodes. He's got the way of the fighter. He was always going to move towards the fight. In his nodes in his design side, he was always going to move towards trying to solve the mystery through all the details. Yet those things are unconscious in him, and the mystery of the not knowing, that's the mystery, by the way. The mystery is the not knowing. What drives Gate 61 in a body graph mad, Gate 61 in that head center, unconscious in him. So don't forget, it's not just driving him mad. If he ever wrote poetry, he would have talked about this gate in words that said, the forces, they beguile the thoughts in my mind. That's how he would have seen this. He would have seen this as, Zeus and the gods and the forces come, why do you beguile my efforts to complete my Nazi war machine? I'm supposed to be here to be the king. That was the old manifestor conditioning, where once upon a time the manifestor way did rule with an iron fist the world. That's how it worked. The madness inside of Gate 61 is this, and it's incredible madness. It's the madness of knowing you don't know and having that be a problem. You're supposed to, Gate 61 has a mantra. If anybody has Gate 61 and you're in your 9-centered vehicle, which you are, and you're here to commune, just recognize Gate 61 is a knower. It's here to know what it can know what it does know, and understand what it cannot know. Certain things it could not know. Which way do I go? Do I fight the Russians on the Western Front while I'm still fighting the Allied forces on the Eastern Front? Other way around, I meant. Do I, which way do I go? Do I really murder my cabinet now or later and install new ones? Which way do I go? Do I allow General Rommel and the Panzer division of those amazing tanks the Germans had to continue to try and take over parts of Africa and the north of Africa, or do I bring them home? Mm-hmm. He couldn't know, and that drove him mad, absolutely mad. It drove him mad. And gate 2 just wants to be in a hurry. Unnatural leadership given by the authoritarian inside of him. There was the authoritarian that ended up being the general and the heretic. And he lived all of that out with this messed up judgment that says to fight is the first way. This messed up judgment that says I am going to become reckless against all authority because I'm going to recreate authority in my name, so I never have to fear authority and challenge. This man was afraid of challenge. And so much so that he would murder it. Again, his solution was to murder anything. He was just like all the awful, ruthless dictators. They're just murder machines. It's the old way. And it's why we've got to get them off the face of this planet even today. We do that through our awakening. Awaken to the fact that we don't need
of our government.
Yeah, well,
That's why I laughed at the United States representative, because, I mean, even if it's not on the surface that they're killing us, out in the plain view that people can recognize, they are still committing genocide against us through our food, through the vaccines, through the education system. I mean, all sorts of things.
Bombings in Yemen, bombings in Somalia. They never answered what happened over in Ethiopia. They could have cared less about the killing fields of Campbell.
None of it has ended. World War II never ended. So
the Iraqi war. Oops, no weapons of mass destruction. Sorry for all that.
I just am not going to give him the credit that he's the one that came up with all this idea that it's never ended and they're still carrying it out.
Jen, there's good history to all that. He doesn't have the credit for all of that. Most of these buildings and the ability to euthanize people came right out of what the Rockefellers had put up in the first place before he was ever in power. And they just imported those ideas over there so they could get some of their experiments done.
Someone was giving him the thoughts.
That's a fair point.
That's what I'm saying. Someone was giving him the thoughts. That's where the hijacking comes in, and let the design go do the design.
You know what else they gave him? Historically speaking, this is true. They gave him the freaking concentration camps were already set up. They weren't set up as concentration camps per
Just
se.
like the FEMA camps?
Yeah.
Sorry. I can't help it.
Famine camps, all of it. You're right, Jennifer. And they put those thoughts in his head by putting those structures in his country. They put him there.
Yeah,
So no, Jen, I agree with the hijacking part. I'm just saying, as once those thoughts went in, because you're right, his open head center was constantly receiving the inspiration of others.
On several different levels, not just in the thoughts, but he obviously was around. If we really wanted to deep dive, we'd be pulling up like his closest generals and the people that were talking to him, consulting him.
Right.
And
well, to keynote all the stuff we just said, the authoritarian that hungered for the experiences of his unnatural leadership, driven to create chaos, not order, through the mysteries he couldn't solve, that drove him absolutely crazy in this manifestor frame that only acted impulsively. He had no other governors on him, and always acted impulsively in the now.
Mm-hmm.
Fueled by the not self of an open sacral center that didn't know when enough was enough. It's never enough. It's never enough. An open ego, fully open ego, didn't know how to value itself, better prove its value, needs to prove it. And an open solar plex center that just feared all confrontation, didn't like the confrontation, and the only way he could do anything about the confrontation was to basically eliminate it. So no confrontations with Adolf. He had a hair trigger against anything that seemed confrontational. Hair trigger in this man. All according to a messed up judgment that didn't have the right values for anything. So there's all because he lived out his not self-existence and was conditioned his whole life.
Yes.
Away from his nature. His nature would have been to be a great impact to the other with an influential way that would have been supportive and appropriate to the needs of humanity, overall in a fantastic way. That's the gifts of this design. None of that happened. So,
Interesting.
I mean, if we have to, we should have one of these things like some of the radios or talk shows do. We should have a little buzzer. So, you know, Hitler gets the big FU, you know, no good. No good. Went totally wrong. You can even see the anger in his eyes. He just sits there angry.
I would love to see Lori do his face.
Yeah, I would too. We need to add Lori into the vortex.
Because I mean, I've watched some of his speeches, and yes, some of them were done out of anger, but some of them were also, you know, from. I'm just speaking from my personal being a manifester. It gets passionate, you know. Whatever he's talking about, he gets to going. So it comes across sometimes, and I have a defiant throat that people are like, "You're yelling at me," and I'm like, "No, I'm not yelling." To me, I'm not yelling, but to everyone else, they may see that as a perception of yelling. Remember, he's the 5-1, so it's what people are viewing him as at the same time is also he's reflecting back. He's got all those projection channels too. It's what is the reflection that what is he really showing us? And that's why I kept asking all these questions, because ultimately take the man out of it, and we've seen the design. We see what the design did in that situation. What is he really reflecting back to us? That's the deeper truth.
That is a good question. I'm not sure how to answer. Well, what he's to me, I got it. Let's go full screen, Jen.
Okay.
To me, I've got a decent answer about what I think he's reflecting back now. So for an historical footnote to be brought forward into the now for something practical, that's something to leave people with. He's reflecting back the dire extremes of the old way, and as it relates to trying to be in existence around us, where we're required to have the new way that has nothing to do with this hierarchical, demanding control system that subjugates the individual for the sake of the collective controlled. A controlled collective. Not a real collective, a controlled collective.
Okay, but you said something important. And what is our collective controlled by right now?
13 families.
No, ultimately.
Our collective.
Why?
Money and power and resources.
Money.
So
even if it wasn't the Jews, say it was a different race, he probably still would have gotten pissed off at that, because ultimately they are ruling us over money and power.
Yep. So that just further pointing out that he grew up in a conditioning environment. He was
very much
out of his nature. He was conditioned away from his nature.
Very much so. Well, a lot of people were back then, because
they all were then.
Yeah, exactly. We all were, and we all have been, and we still are continuing to be conditioned. That's why I think it's important that we do these shows. And just you totally got to see the 5-1 come out of me, my investigating, because I take what. Not that I don't think that any of that stuff didn't happen, and that I don't think that I've been to the Holocaust Museum. I'm Native American. I can go tit for tat, Jews, Native Americans, shamanism, whatever. We have the biggest genocide too, that still continues. So it's not right overall, but I am the investigator in me is trying to get to the source of it all, because once you pull out the root, it's going to dismantle everything else.
Everything gets better as this world becomes less 7-centered and more 9-centered in its general way.
Absolutely.
That's a whole class. We could just talk about just that, so that we could actually get into, what's the scoop on all that. By the way, I don't have a topic for Sunday.
Okay.
Thinking of possibly doing Rand Paul or Robin Williams for next Wednesday.
Okay.
And people chime in to see who else we could do. But yeah, Adolf Hitler was literally designed to be so afraid of tomorrow that he would do anything to fix it in the now as it related to his own puny little scared self. He's always scared. No ego,
I
no
would think he
emotion,
hated
always
that.
scared. Always. Little freaking,
Most of them are.
yeah, little sissy.
You know,
See him one-on-one with any regular man, he'd be like, what do I do? They hit me. Oh my God.
Well, yeah, most bullies, anyone that is always going to go to that extent to either push someone else down or ultimately it's a scared little 5-year-old. So that's the truth of it. So if you guys have anybody that you would like to see us do their chart, definitely drop a comment down below. Let us know. Let us know what you thought of this video. If you liked it, please give us a thumbs up. Make sure that you share the information out. Don't forget that we have our monthly program that's now open, the Vortex. It's only $8.88 a month. If you would like more information on that, you can check the links in the description. And don't forget to book your session with Dan, or if you're not quite sure that you want to quite do that, you can always book a consultation call and we can take care of that for you as well. As always,
Book the session. Consultation call is just going to have you book the session anyways. Get yourself read or book the session if you need to.
Anyways, yes, book your session. Thank you, everybody who tuned in, and we will talk to you later.
Adios.